Captain Zethra of the Valtar Empire stood on the bridge of his warship, staring at the empty space where New Geneva should have been bustling with activity. The human trade station hung in the void like a ghost ship. All the lights were on. The docking bays were open, but there were no ships coming or going. "Send another signal," he ordered his communications officer. "Still no response, Captain," came the reply. "The automated systems are working fine. Life support is running, but no one is answering." This made no sense. New Geneva was one of the busiest trade hubs in this sector. Thousands of humans worked there, along with traders from dozens of different species. It was impossible for a place like this to just empty out. Zethra had been dealing with humans for over 20 years. They were strange creatures. Not as strong as the Veltar, not as smart as the Zephyrians, not as fierce as the Corvins, but they had something that made them useful. They could talk to anyone. They could make deals between species that hated each other. They kept the peace in ways that no one else could. "Take us in for docking," Zethra commanded. The massive Veltar warship moved slowly toward the station. As they got closer, Zethra could see through the windows. The corridors were lit up. He could even see furniture and equipment in place. But no people walked the halls. They docked without any problems. The station systems guided them in perfectly. When the airlock opened, they stepped into New Geneva to find something that would haunt Zethra for the rest of his life. Everything was perfect. The shops were stocked with goods. The restaurants had food on the tables, still warm. Drinks sat, half finished at bars. Personal belongings lay scattered around as if people had just stepped away for a moment. But there were no bodies, no signs of struggle, no blood or damage. The humans had simply vanished. "Search every level," Zethra ordered his troops. "Find something, anything." Hours passed. His soldiers reported the same thing from every deck. Beds were unmade, as if people had just gotten up. Workstations were active with projects half finished. Children's toys lay scattered in the family quarters. But not a single human remained. Zethra made his way to the station commander's office. Commander Sarah Chun had run New Geneva for 8 years. Her office door was open. Her coffee was still hot on her desk. Her computer was logged in, showing routine reports from the previous day. A family photo sat next to her keyboard, showing her with her husband and 2 young children. Where had they all gone? Over the following days, reports came in from across the galaxy. It was not just New Geneva. Human colonies on 17 different worlds had gone silent. Trade posts, diplomatic stations, research facilities, and mining operations all showed the same pattern. The humans were simply gone. The Corvan Republic sent battle fleets to 3 human worlds, expecting to find some kind of trap or trick. Instead, they found empty cities with power still running and systems still working. The Zephyrian Collective dispatched their best investigators to human diplomatic posts. They found the same thing. No signs of violence, no clues about what had happened. Admiral Corzin of the Corvan Republic called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. Representatives from all major species gathered on the neutral space. Station Harmony Point, the mood in the Great Council chamber was tense. "This has to be some kind of human trick," Admiral Corzin declared, his scarred face twisted with suspicion. "They are planning something. This is probably the start of some attack." Elder Velshan of the Zephyrian Collective shook her ancient head. "My people have studied the abandoned sites carefully. There are no signs of preparation for war, no hidden weapons, no secret messages. It appears they simply ... Left?" Corzin slammed his fist on the table. "Entire worlds do not just leave. Where would they go? How would they move billions of people without anyone noticing?" Senator Krixta of the Veltar spoke up. "Our intelligence networks show no unusual ship movements in human space for months. Yet somehow they moved their entire population somewhere else." The room fell quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it out loud. How could an entire species disappear without anyone noticing? "Perhaps," said Elder Velshan slowly, "we should consider that the humans planned this for a very long time. They are known for their long-term thinking." "But why?" Senator Krixta asked. They had good relations with most of us. Their trade was profitable, their colonies were growing. Why would they abandon everything? Admiral Corzin stood up, his military uniform crisp and intimidating. It does not matter why. What matters is that they left behind valuable territory and resources. The Corvan Republic claims the former human worlds in Sectors 7 through 12. The Veltar Empire disputes that claim, Senator Krixta said quickly. Our borders are closer to those worlds. Both of you forget, Elder Velshin interrupted, that the Zephyrian Collective has the oldest treaties with humanity. We should inherit their territories. The argument that followed was loud and bitter. Each species wanted to claim the abandoned human territories for themselves. They talked about mining rights, strategic locations, and valuable real estate, but none of them asked the important question, what would happen to the galaxy without humans? Within weeks, the great powers had divided up former human space among themselves. The Corvans took the military outposts and defensive positions. The Veltar claimed the trade routes and commercial centers. The Zephyrians grabbed the research facilities and cultural sites. It seemed like everyone had won. The humans were gone. And their former rivals could finally expand into territories they had always wanted, but Captain Zethra, now promoted to Admiral for his discovery of the empty New Geneva, felt uneasy. He kept thinking about that half-finished coffee on Commander Chun's desk, about the family photo showing her smiling children, about the way everything had been left behind as if the humans expected to come back, late at night, alone in his quarters. Admiral Zethra would stare out at the stars and wonder, where had the humans gone? And more importantly, why did he have the feeling that their departure was not the end of something, but the beginning? In the emptiness of space, where New Geneva had once buzzed with activity, only automated systems continued their work. Lights blinked on and off. Computers processed routine data. But no voices filled the corridors and no laughter echoed in the common areas. The humans had left quietly, without drama or fanfare. They had not declared war or made threats. They had simply chosen to go somewhere else. The galaxy would soon learn what it meant to live without them. Dr. Nexus Veltar was not like other members of his species. While most Veltar focused on military conquest and trade, Nexus loved to learn about the past. He was what humans had called an archaeologist, though he preferred to think of himself as a seeker of truth. When the Veltar Empire claimed the former human research colony on Kepler Prime, Nexus volunteered to lead the investigation team. The planet held the largest human university outside of Earth, with libraries and laboratories that had attracted students from across known space. The university campus was enormous. Tall white buildings stretched across rolling green hills under Kepler Prime's purple sky. As Nexus walked through the empty hallways, his footsteps echoed loudly in the silence. Everything was exactly as the humans had left it. In the main library, books still lay open on reading tables. Digital screens showed research projects that students had been working on just days before. The coffee shop in the student center had pastries sitting behind glass counters, now stale but still perfectly arranged. It is like they were frozen in time, said Nexus's assistant, a young Veltar named Kethra. No, Nexus replied, running his clawed hand along a dusty desk. It is like they knew exactly when they were leaving. The research team split up to explore different parts of the campus. Nexus headed for the administrative building, where the university's most important records would be kept. He wanted to understand how the humans had managed such a perfect disappearance. The president's office was on the top floor of the central tower. President Maria Santos had run Kepler Prime University for 15 years. Her office was large and comfortable, with windows that looked out over the entire campus. Her desk was neat and organized, with important papers stacked in careful piles. Nexus began going through the files on her computer. Most were routine university business, budget reports, student applications, faculty meetings. But as he dug deeper into the secure folders, he found something interesting. There were files labeled Project Exodus dating back over 50 years. The first documents were just ideas. Human philosophers and scientists asking difficult questions. What if humanity could never be truly accepted by other species? What if they would always be seen as useful but not equal? What if the only way to find real freedom was to leave known space entirely? As Nexus read through decades of files, a picture began to form. This was not a sudden decision. The humans had been planning their departure for generations. The early documents talked about the problems humans faced in galactic society. They were often treated as mediators because other species did not trust each other, but they were rarely invited to join the real decision-making. When conflicts arose between major powers, humans were expected to fix things. But when benefits were distributed, humans got the smallest share. President Santos had written many reports about these issues. In one file from 5 years ago, she described a meeting with Cephrian officials who had demanded that human researchers share their discoveries but refuse to share their own advanced technology in return. They see us as clever pets, she had written, useful for solving problems they cannot solve themselves, but not worthy of being true partners. Nexus found himself feeling uncomfortable as he read these reports. He remembered similar meetings, where Veltar commanders had made similar demands of human allies. At the time, it had seemed reasonable. The Veltar were stronger and more experienced in warfare. Of course, the humans should be grateful for protection and guidance, but reading President Santos's private thoughts, Nexus began to see things differently. The humans had not felt grateful. They had felt used. The Project Exodus files showed how human leaders had slowly, carefully begun planning an alternative. They studied star charts of unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim. They researched what kind of ships and supplies would be needed for a journey into unknown space. They calculated how long it would take to move their entire population without anyone noticing. The planning was incredible. Humans had been building special long-range ships in secret for decades. They had been stockpiling supplies and resources. They had been training their people for a journey that would take them far from everything they had ever known. But the most impressive part was how they had kept it secret. Reading through the files, Nexus saw that only a small number of humans had known the full plan. Information was shared on a need-to-know basis. Even most humans had not known they were leaving until the final weeks. In President Santos's final entries, she wrote about the last faculty meeting. She had told her staff that the university would be closing permanently, but she had not explained why. The faculty had been confused and upset, but they had trusted her leadership. They had helped pack up the most important research and prepare for departure. Some of my colleagues ask if we are running away, she had written. I tell them we are not running from something, we are walking toward something better. Nexus found shipping records that showed how the humans had gradually moved their population. Small groups had left over many months, taking personal belongings and essential equipment. They had used regular transport ships and made it look like normal travel between colonies. By the time anyone noticed something was wrong, the last ships had already departed. The humans had timed everything perfectly, leaving behind empty worlds and stations that would continue running on automatic systems for weeks or months. But where had they gone? The star charts in the Project Exodus files showed routes into unexplored space beyond the galactic rim. There were notes about potential habitable worlds that might exist in those regions, but the final destinations were not marked on any map. In President Santos's last entry, dated just 3 days before the discovery of empty human territories, she had written, "Today we take the final step into the unknown. Our children will grow up free from the expectations and limitations that others have placed on us. They will build something new, something that belongs entirely to them." As Nexus finished reading the files, he realized that his own people had completely misunderstood what had happened. The Veltar, like the other galactic powers, had assumed the humans were planning some kind of military action. They had looked for hidden weapons and secret alliances. Instead, the humans had done something much more radical. They had chosen to leave everything behind rather than continue living as second-class citizens in a galaxy that would never truly accept them. Kethra appeared in the doorway of the office. "Dr. Nexus, you need to see something we found in the engineering building." They walked across campus to the massive engineering complex. In the basement, Kethra led him to a room filled with computer servers and communication equipment. The walls were covered with star charts and technical diagrams. This was their coordination center, Kethra explained. They used it to communicate with other human colonies during the evacuation. Nexus studied the star charts. They showed the known galaxy with human territories marked in blue. But there were also red lines leading out beyond the edge of mapped space, pointing toward regions that no one had ever explored. On one wall, someone had written a message in human script: "We choose the unknown over the unacceptable." For the first time in his life, Nexus began to understand something important about humans. They were not just clever problem solvers or useful mediators. They were beings who valued freedom more than security and dignity more than comfort. The humans had left quietly because they had nothing left to say to a galaxy that had never learned to listen. Ambassador Taishka of the Zephyrian Collective had lived for over 300 years. She had seen empires rise and fall, watched species discover space travel and expand across the stars. She thought she understood how the galaxy worked, but 3 months after the humans disappeared, everything began to fall apart. It started with small things. The regular trade meetings between the Corvan Republic and the Veltar Empire were postponed because neither side could agree on basic terms. The Zephyrian merchants found their cargo ships being turned away from ports that had always welcomed them before. Border disputes that had been quiet for decades suddenly flared up again. The Corvan military began building new bases near Veltar territory. The Veltar responded by increasing patrols along their trade routes. Old arguments about mining rights and shipping lanes turned into angry confrontations. Taishka spent her days trying to calm tensions between species that seemed unable to talk to each other anymore. But every meeting ended the same way, with threats, accusations, and mutual distrust. "The Corvans are being unreasonable," Senator Krixta complained during one particularly difficult session. "They demand exclusive access to the Rigel shipping corridor, but they offer nothing in return. The Veltar speak of fairness while they steal our trade contracts," Admiral Korzan shot back. "Your merchants undercut our prices using illegal subsidies. Both of you ignore the real problem," Elder Velshin said in her ancient creaky voice. "The Thorax Confederation is expanding into our territories while we argue among ourselves." Taishika tried to mediate, but nothing worked. Every compromise she suggested was rejected by at least one side. Every solution created new problems. The species that had coexisted peacefully for generations now seemed unable to agree on anything. It took her weeks to realize what was missing. The humans had always been present at these meetings, not as major players, but as helpful voices in the background. They would suggest solutions that everyone could accept. They would find ways to make complex deals work. They would quietly talk to different sides and help them understand each other's positions. Without the humans, the other species had no one to translate between their different ways of thinking. The Corvans saw everything as a military problem, to be solved with strength. The Veltar viewed everything as a business deal to be negotiated for profit. The Zephyrians approached everything as a puzzle to be solved with logic and patience. In the past, humans had somehow bridged these different approaches. They had helped each species see problems from other perspectives. They had found compromises that satisfied everyone's core needs while giving up things that were not really important. Now, without human mediators, every disagreement became a crisis. The economic problems came next. Trade routes that had functioned smoothly for decades began to break down. Ships were delayed at checkpoints as different species imposed new security requirements. Cargo manifests that had been processed quickly became subjects of lengthy investigations. The Zephyrian merchant fleet found itself caught in the middle. Their ships carried goods between dozens of different worlds, but now every port had different rules and regulations. What was legal in Veltar space was forbidden in Corvan territory. Products that met Zephyrian quality standards were rejected by other species for reasons no one could explain clearly. Captain Vextar commanded one of the largest cargo vessels in the Zephyrian fleet. She had been shipping goods across the galaxy for 40 years, but now she could barely complete a single trade run without problems. "I spent 6 days at the Corvin checkpoint at Betelgeuse," she reported to Taishka. "They inspected every container. 3 times. They demanded certificates that do not exist. They charge fees that are not in any regulations I know about." "What did they say they were looking for?" Taishka asked. "They would not say. Just security concerns and new protocols. But I think they were really looking for human products or technology. They seemed surprised that my ship was purely Zephyrian." This was happening everywhere. Each species had become suspicious of goods that might have come from abandoned human territories. They were afraid that other species might gain advantages by claiming human technology or resources, but the real crisis came from an unexpected direction. Taishka was in her office on the diplomatic station at Harmony Point when the emergency alert came through. A massive asteroid field had shifted course and was heading directly toward the inhabited Rigel system. The asteroids would arrive in 6 weeks, and some of them were large enough to destroy entire planets. She immediately called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. The great chamber filled with worried representatives from every major species. "How did this happen?" Admiral Corzan demanded. "Our deep space monitoring systems should have detected this months ago." Elder Velshin was studying data displays with a confused expression. "The monitoring stations in that sector are all operational, but they are not reporting the asteroid movement." Senator Kriksta pulled up star charts on the main screen. "The monitoring grid in the outer sectors has been maintained by human crews for over a century. They had stations positioned to watch for exactly this kind of threat." The terrible truth became clear. The humans had not just left their colonies and trade posts. They had also abandoned the early warning systems that protected the entire galaxy from cosmic threats for generations. Human scientists and technicians had quietly maintained a network of sensor stations and monitoring posts in deep space. They watched for rogue planets, asteroid fields, gamma-ray bursts, and other dangers that could threaten inhabited worlds. No one else had paid much attention to this work. It was not glamorous or profitable. It did not involve military glory or political power. So the humans had been left to handle it alone. Now those monitoring stations were still operational, but they had no human crews to interpret the data and send warnings. Automated systems could detect changes, but they could not understand what those changes meant or decide when to alert other species. "We need to send teams to the monitoring stations immediately," Taishka said. "We must learn how to operate the warning systems ourselves. My engineers can handle any human technology," Admiral Corzan declared confidently. "The Veltar have better technical expertise," Senator Kriksta argued. "Our people should lead this effort." "Both of you lack the necessary scientific background," Elder Velshin said dismissively. "The Zephyrian Collective has the most advanced research capabilities." The argument that followed wasted precious hours. Each species wanted to control the human monitoring systems, but none of them really understood how those systems worked. The humans had developed their own methods and procedures over many decades. Finally, they agreed to send joint teams to the most important monitoring stations. But when the teams arrived, they found systems that were far more complex than anyone had expected. The humans had not just built sensor arrays and computer networks. They had created an integrated system that required constant human judgment and decision-making. The computers could gather data, but human operators had to interpret that data and decide what actions to take. Without humans, the galaxy was flying blind through space. The asteroid crisis was eventually solved when Zephyrian scientists found a way to redirect the asteroid field using gravitational manipulation technology. But the solution took weeks to implement, and 3 inhabited moons were destroyed before the threat was neutralized. The disaster could have been prevented if human monitoring crews had detected the problem months earlier and provided early warning. After The crisis passed. Taiska sat alone in her office, staring out at the stars. For the first time in her long life, she felt truly frightened. The humans had not just been useful allies or convenient mediators. They had been the invisible foundation that held galactic civilization together. They had handled the thankless tasks that kept everyone else safe. They had solved problems that no one else wanted to deal with. Now they were gone, and the galaxy was discovering how much it had depended on them. Taiska thought about the human motto she had seen written on walls in their abandoned facilities. We choose the unknown over the unacceptable. For the first time, she began to understand what the humans had found unacceptable about their life in the galaxy. They had been essential but unappreciated, vital but invisible, needed but never truly wanted. Outside her window, the stars looked different now, less friendly, more dangerous. Full of threats that no one was watching for, the humans had left quietly, and the galaxy was only beginning to understand what their silence would cost. Commander Yeksen of the Joint Exploration Fleet had volunteered for what everyone called a hopeless mission. 6 months after the asteroid crisis, the galactic powers had finally realized they needed to find the humans and bring them back. The search began with analysis of the star charts found in human facilities. The red lines on those maps pointed toward unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim, where no civilized species had ever traveled. These were dark areas of space filled with unknown dangers and unmapped star systems. We know they went this way, Commander Yeksan told her mixed crew of Veltar, Zephyrian, and Corvin officers. But space is vast. Finding them will require patience and luck. The Joint Exploration Fleet consisted of 12 ships from the 3 major powers. Each species had contributed their best vessels and most experienced crews. They carried enough supplies for a 2-year journey into the unknown. Their first discovery came 3 weeks into the search. In a dead star system near the galactic edge, they found a small space station powered down and apparently abandoned. But when they boarded it, they found supplies and equipment clearly left behind by humans. This was a refueling depot, reported Chief Engineer Kolvex, a massive Corvin with cybernetic implants covering half his face. The humans stopped here to replenish their ships during the journey. The station's computer logs showed that human ships had used the facility over a period of several months. Thousands of vessels had passed through, carrying millions of passengers and massive amounts of cargo. They were very organized, observed Science Officer Nalthys, an elderly Zephyrian with pale blue skin. Each ship had specific schedules and supply requirements. This was not a desperate escape. This was a planned migration. But the most important discovery was the navigation data left in the station's computers. The humans had not tried to hide their route. They had left clear records showing which direction they had traveled when leaving the station. They want us to follow them, Commander Yeksun realized. They are leaving a trail. The fleet followed the trail deeper into unexplored space. They found more supply stations, each one powered down but perfectly preserved. The humans had built a chain of refueling and resupply points stretching across thousands of light-years. Each station told part of the story of humanity's incredible journey. The fleet found records of births and deaths during the long voyage. They found personal messages left by travelers who knew they might never see their old homes again. They found children's drawings showing strange new stars and alien landscapes. Look at this, said Lieutenant Vashka, a young Veltar communications officer. She had found a personal log entry left by a human child named Tommy Chun, age 8. Daddy says we are going to live on a new world where we can be free, the boy had recorded. I miss my friends back home, but Mommy says we will make new friends. She says where we are going, no one will tell us what we can and cannot do. The innocence in the child's voice made the entire crew uncomfortable. These were not military refugees fleeing a war zone. These were families who had chosen to leave everything behind for a chance at a better life. As the fleet traveled deeper into unknown space, they began to encounter new challenges. The star charts from their home territories were useless here. They had to rely on their own sensors and navigation. systems to avoid dangers like gravitational anomalies and radiation fields. The humans did this journey with civilian ships and families aboard, Navigator Thekra pointed out during one particularly difficult passage through an asteroid field. If they could do it, we can follow their path. But the trail was getting older. The supply stations they found showed that human ships had passed through many months earlier. The gap between the human departure and the pursuit fleet was not shrinking. After 2 months of searching, they made a disturbing discovery. In a system with 3 dead planets, they found debris from human ships. Not the wreckage of a battle, but the remains of vessels that had been deliberately destroyed. These were cargo ships, Chief Engineer Kolvex reported after examining the debris. They appeared to have been stripped of all useful materials and then scuttled. Why would they destroy their own ships? Commander Yeksen wondered. Science Officer Nauthies had the answer. They reached a point where they no longer needed the ships that had brought them this far. They were building something new. The discovery filled the search fleet with both hope and dread. They were clearly getting closer to the humans' destination. But the destruction of ships suggested that the humans had found a place where they intended to stay permanently. 3 weeks later, they found the most significant clue. Yet, in a system with a yellow star similar to Earth's sun, they discovered a massive space facility under construction. The structure was incomplete but clearly designed for industrial manufacturing and shipbuilding. "This is incredible," breathed Chief Engineer Kolvex as he studied the facility's specifications. "They are building something larger and more advanced than anything in the home galaxy." The facility was abandoned but recent. Computer logs showed that human workers had been active there just weeks before the search fleet arrived. They had been constructing new types of ships designed for long-range exploration and deep space colonization. "They are not just looking for a new home," Science Officer Nauthies observed. "They are preparing to explore regions of space that we cannot even imagine." But once again, the humans had moved on before their pursuers could catch up. The trail led even deeper into unknown space, toward star systems that appeared on no charts and regions where strange phenomena defied known physics. The search fleet was now far from any hope of rescue or resupply. They were dependent on the human supply stations for survival, following a trail left by people who clearly did not want to be found. Commander Yeksen called a meeting of her senior officers. The mood in the conference room was tense. "We have been searching for 4 months," she said. "Our supplies are running low, and we are farther from home than any expedition in history. We must decide whether to continue or turn back." "The trail is getting fresher," Navigator Thekra pointed out. "The last facility showed signs of activity just 2 weeks ago. We might be catching up. Or we might be following them forever," countered Lieutenant Vashka. "What if they do not want to be found? What if they keep moving no matter how far we follow?" Admiral Corzin back home had given Commander Yeksen authority to make this decision. The search fleet could continue deeper into the unknown, risking their lives and ships for a chance to contact the humans. Or they could return home with the information they had already gathered. "There is something else to consider," Science Officer Nauthies said quietly. "The humans have been in these regions for almost a year now. They may have encountered things that we cannot imagine. Dangers, opportunities, or discoveries that have changed them in ways we cannot predict." "What do you mean?" Commander Yeksen asked. "I mean that the humans we find may not be the same humans who left our galaxy. They may have grown into something new, something we do not understand." The meeting continued for hours, but no clear consensus emerged. Finally, Commander Yeksen made her decision. "We continue," she announced. "But we send half the fleet back to report our findings. The rest of us will keep following the trail for as long as possible." 6 ships turned back toward home, carrying detailed reports about the human exodus and the incredible infrastructure they had built during their journey. The remaining 6 ships pressed on into the deepest regions of unexplored space. 2 weeks later, they found something that changed everything. It was not another supply station or abandoned facility. It was a message beacon, clearly of human construction, floating in the empty space between stars. The beacon was broadcasting a signal aimed directly at the galactic core, toward the home territories of all the major species. Commander Yeksen ordered the fleet to retrieve the beacon and download its message. As the data came through, she realized that their long search was about to end. The humans had left them a message. Not coordinates or directions, but something far more important. An invitation to talk. The message beacon floated in the darkness between stars, its soft blue light pulsing steadily as it transmitted across the void. Commander Yeksen stood in the communication center of her flagship, watching as her crew downloaded the human transmission. "The signal is strong and clear," reported Lieutenant Vashka. "It appears to be a recorded message, but there are also real-time communication protocols. They want to establish contact." "Put it on the main screen," Commander Yeksen ordered. The display flickered to life, showing the image of an elderly human woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She wore simple clothes and sat in what appeared to be a comfortable chair. Behind her, large windows showed stars that Commander Yeksen did not recognize. "My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez," the woman began, her voice calm and steady. "I am speaking on behalf of the human communities that have established new homes beyond the galactic rim. If you are receiving this message, it means you have followed our trail across thousands of light years of space. We are grateful for your persistence, but we suspect you may not understand why we left." The woman paused, looking directly into the camera as if she could see her audience across the vast distance of space. "We did not leave your galaxy because of anger or hatred. We left because we finally understood something important about ourselves and about you. We are different in ways that go deeper than biology or culture. We are different in how we think about freedom, control, and the future." Commander Yeksen felt her crew growing restless around her. This was not what they had expected to hear. They had come to bring the humans back, to negotiate their return to galactic civilization. Instead, they were getting a philosophy lesson. "For generations, our species coexisted in the galaxy," Dr. Vasquez continued. "But we were never true partners. You saw us as useful tools for solving problems you could not solve yourselves. We became mediators because you could not trust each other. We became peacekeepers because you could not control your own conflicts." The human woman stood up and walked to the windows behind her chair. The view showed a spectacular nebula painted in shades of purple and gold, with new stars being born in clouds of cosmic dust. "We realized that you needed us to be small and manageable. You needed us to focus on your problems instead of our own dreams. You needed us to help you maintain a galaxy where control and hierarchy were more important than growth and freedom." Science Officer Nauthies leaned forward in her chair. "She is describing our society from a very different perspective than I have ever considered." Dr. Vasquez turned back to face the camera. "We tried to work within your systems for centuries. We followed your laws, respected your borders, and accepted our place in your hierarchies. But our children deserved better. They deserved the chance to build something new." The image changed to show a group of human children playing in a vast space station corridor. The children were laughing and running freely, their voices echoing in the metal halls. But what struck Commander Yeksen was the design of the station itself. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, with flowing curves and organic shapes that seemed to grow rather than being built. "This is our new home," Dr. Vasquez said as the image returned to her face. "Not a single world, but a network of habitats and stations that we built together in the space between galaxies. Here, our children grow up without being told what they cannot become. Here, we explore and discover without asking permission from species that fear change." Lieutenant Vashko whispered to her commander. "They are not just hiding from us. They are building their own civilization." The message continued with images of human communities that looked nothing like the colonies they had left behind. Instead of copying the architectural styles and social structures of the major galactic powers, these humans had created something entirely original. You may wonder why we are willing to talk to you now, Dr. Vasquez said. The answer is simple. We have grown beyond the need for your approval or disapproval. We can afford to be generous because we are finally free. Commander Yexen felt a chill run down her spine. This was not the desperate plea for help that she had expected. This was a statement from a people who had moved beyond the galaxy's reach. We know that our departure has caused problems for you, the human woman continued. We know that the systems we maintained are failing. We know that species that could coexist only with our help are now in conflict. We are sorry for your difficulties, but we are not responsible for fixing them. The image changed again, showing star charts of the regions beyond the galactic rim. Vast areas of space were now marked with human settlements and exploration routes. The scope of their expansion was staggering. However, Dr. Vasquez said, we are willing to offer you a choice. You can continue trying to control each other, fighting over resources and territory while your civilization slowly falls apart. Or you can learn to think differently about freedom and cooperation. The star charts disappeared, replaced by coordinates and navigation data. These coordinates will bring you to a neutral meeting point in the space between our galaxy and yours. If your species are truly ready to change, if you can learn to value freedom over control and cooperation over dominance, then we can talk about building something together. Commander Yexen realized that her hands were shaking. This was not the outcome that any of the galactic powers had anticipated. The humans were not asking to return. They were offering to teach their former neighbors how to become something better. But understand this clearly, Dr. Vasquez continued, her voice becoming firm. We will not return to the old ways. We will not go back to being your problem solvers and mediators. If you want our help, you must be willing to change as much as we have changed. The message showed images of human ships unlike anything in the known galaxy. They were sleek and organic, designed for journeys that would last decades or centuries. These were not vehicles for traveling between established worlds. They were homes for people who planned to keep exploring forever. We have learned something important during our time in the void, Dr. Vasquez said. The universe is vast beyond imagination, filled with wonders that no single species could discover alone. There are regions of space where matter and energy behave in ways that challenge everything we thought we knew. There are phenomena that require new kinds of thinking to understand. The elderly woman returned to her chair, but her expression had changed. She looked younger somehow, filled with excitement about discoveries yet to be made. We invite you to join us in exploring these mysteries, but only if you can let go of your need to control and dominate. Only if you can embrace the unknown instead of fearing it. The message began to wind down, but Dr. Vasquez had one final thing to say. We left quietly because we had nothing more to say to the galaxy we knew. We speak to you now because we hope you can become a galaxy worth talking to. The choice is yours. The transmission ended, leaving Commander Yexen and her crew in stunned silence. They had traveled farther from home than anyone in their species' history, expecting to find refugees who needed rescue. Instead, they had found teachers who might be willing to share wisdom that could transform galactic civilization. What do we do now? Asked Lieutenant Vashka. Commander Yexen looked at the coordinates the humans had provided. The meeting point was still weeks away, in a region of space that existed between galaxies. It would be the longest journey any of their species had ever attempted. We have a choice to make, she said finally. We can return home and report that the humans are lost forever. Or we can take these coordinates to our leaders and see if they are brave enough to try something new. Outside the ship's windows, the beacon continued its patient transmission, sending the human message toward the galactic core where other species would soon have to decide what kind of future they wanted to build. The humans had left quietly, choosing freedom over acceptance, unknown possibilities over familiar limitations. Now they were offering their former neighbors a chance to make the same choice, but they would not wait forever for an answer. In the vast spaces between stars, there were too many wonders waiting to be discovered by people brave enough to leave the old ways behind.